There's an old Chinese saying that goes 富不过三代, which roughly translates to prosperity does not last through more than 3 generations. Well, I guess that holds true for dynasties as well, because if we don't count King Wen, who ruled over the Zhou people before the foundation of the dynasty, the early Zhou dynasty had a pretty good run of kings with King Wen, King Cheng, and King Kang. But their run of good luck with rulers will come to a screeching halt with the next guy on the throne. In this episode of the Western Zhou Dynasty, we are going to talk about King Zhao of Zhou, who would quite literally kickstart the decline of the Zhou Dynasty. Hello history lovers, and welcome to the show where we share the myths, legends and histories of the Chinese people, from the first creator to the last imperial dynasty. More than 6,000 years of stories, one video at a time. Now, King Kang of Zhou will pass away in the 25th year of his reign, somewhere around 1001 BCE and 996 BCE. And he would be succeeded by his eldest legitimate son, a guy by the name of Zhaos, who would later go on to be known as King Zhao of Zhou or Zhou Zhao Wang. Now, after just having gone through 40 years of golden age under the rules of King Cheng and King Kang, now one would assume that even if the new king was not as capable as his predecessors, he should at least be able to maintain a kind of a status quo. No one would expect that the kingdom and the dynasty would start its decline almost immediately with the succession of Zhaos to the Zhou throne. Now, for some context and background, Zhaos, being the eldest legitimate son of King Kang, would be the natural heir to the throne from the moment of his birth, and therefore he will be fawned upon by all the palace maids and the palace attendants, basically from birth. Growing up during the golden age of Cheng and Kang of the early Western Zhou dynasty also meant that the struggles and the hardships of his early ancestors were no more than stories and tales that were so far removed from his own lived experiences. And therefore, Zhaos was an extremely pampered child who had all his whims and fancies satisfied on demand and basically had no concept of the struggles and the hardships that normal people would go through. And so, by the time he ascended to the Zhou throne as the next king, the sense of entitlement was already deeply ingrained into his character, and the lack of capable officials and advisors in the Zhou court of this time would exacerbate the problems that his character flaws would cause to the kingdom. Now, due to the lack of records and documentations of King Zhao, not much was known about the early days of his reign apart from a rebellion by the Tongyi peoples in the first year of his reign, where King Zhao will order Princeling Mo or Wang Sun Mo to put down this rebellion. Later in the same year, the Marquess of Chao or Chao He will also rebel against Zhou rule, but that would be also quickly put down by deploying 6 divisions from Luoyang, the eastern administrative capital of the Zhou dynasty. Now, from what precious little we know about King Zhao, as a ruler, he apparently spent extremely little time on his duties, focusing instead on his hobby of collecting rare plants and animals. Now, while we shared many stories of his predecessors who would drop everything on their hands to attend to state emergencies or to welcome rare talents into the kingdom, King Zhao would kind of go the opposite direction. He was known to drop important affairs of state to organize basically impromptu hunting trips whenever he heard reports of sightings of these rare animals roaming around the land. Now, knowing of his obsession with this rare flora and fauna of the land, many unscrupulous or corrupt officials of the realm would present rare flowers or rare animals to the throne to progress their own political careers and secure benefits for themselves. So we could rightly presume that the reign of King Zhao would not be known for being clean or progressive or uncorrupted. Now, his reign was perceived to be so bad that royal historians actually documented abnormal weather conditions that happened during his reign. Now, when abnormal weather conditions were observed, when this kind of natural phenomena were happening, they were usually understood at that time to be the warning signs that the heavens were generally unhappy with the king or the ruling dynasty of the time. Now, according to the Bamboo Annals, the 14th year of King Zhao's reign, summer, 4th moon, the stars disappeared from the skies. Autumn, 7th month, the Lu state's ruler was killed and his titles and lands usurped. Now, we could easily brush off these early beliefs of abnormal weather conditions being a warning signs from the heavens. We could easily brush it off as superstitious beliefs of the ancient people. However, the second part of the document in these Bamboo Annals will shed more insight into King Zhao's reign of the time. Now, what happened was, simply put, in the 7th month of the 14th year of King Zhao's reign, the Marquess of Lu was actually killed by his own younger brother in a political coup, and the title and lands were usurped by his younger brother, this guy named Ji Fei, who would later be known as Duke Wei of Lu or Lu Wei Gong. Now, if you've been following this series, you would know that the Zhou people were really sticklers for rules and hierarchy and social order. So, what do you think was the throne's response to this heinous crime of fratricide and treason? Well, the answer is nothing. There was no response. The silence from the throne was deafening. Not only were there no military response from the central court, there wasn't even a harsh word or any form of censure for this usurper. Now, the Zhou court's failure to respond to such a shocking incident happening in the land of culture and etiquette greatly damaged its standing as the arbiter and the standard bearer of morals and values in the realm. Seeing that one could commit such a heinous crime without fear of repercussion from the throne, the vassal states would become more audacious in their conflicts with each other. I mean, stronger states would frequently bully smaller states, and some went as far as stopping their tributes to the central court altogether and even disregarded direct orders from the throne. And this would effectively mark the start of the decline of the Zhou Central Court's authority over regional lords and over the various vassal states of the realm. Now, for all of his character flaws and inept administration of the kingdom in terms of internal affairs, King Zhao managed to garner some form of achievements, I guess, in the later years of his reign. With the savage south getting more and more restless, threatening the borders of the Zhou kingdom, King Zhao actually decided to take the initiative for the first time in his reign. A massive southern expedition was planned to further exert influence over the local tribes, but more importantly, to gain control over the numerous copper mines in the lands of Jing and Chu. Now, do note that the Chu that we're talking about here is the general term used to refer to the savage Southlands and not the state of Chu that we spoke about in the previous episode. Now, that is a very important distinction to make because for the longest time in history, scholars and historians presume that King Zhao's southern expedition was actually against the state of Chu and not the general savage Southlands, also known as Chu at that time. Now, this mix-up between the two was actually started during the Eastern Han Dynasty due to a misinterpretation by scholar Wang Yi in his commentary of the Warring States poem Heavenly Questions. The severe lack of historical source texts regarding King Zhao's reign would also contribute to later historians and scholars continuing with that line of thought and presume that King Zhao's southern expedition was launched against the state of Chu. This misconception would fortunately be corrected by modern day historians through archaeological discoveries and re-examining the related documents on the matter. Now, for some context, While the state of Chu did enjoy close relationships with the tribes of the Chu lands, they were still a small state of less than around 50 square kilometers at this time, and the Viscount of Chu was not even allowed into the Council of Lords in the Zhou court. And therefore, a successful campaign against such an insignificant state would not warrant the official documentations that took up most of the passages regarding King Zhao's reign, and it would most definitely not result in the massive numbers of ceremonial bronzes that were cast to commemorate the event. Now, according to the Bamboo Annals, once again, King Zhao would launch a total of 3 southern campaigns or 3 southern expeditions, and they are documented as follows. 16th year of King Zhao's reign, the king led the armies across the Han River deep into Chu lands, and there he saw a big rhino. 19th year of King Zhao's reign, spring, the tail of a comet obscured the North Star. Ji Gong, Xin Bo followed the king in his campaign against the Chu lands. The sky suddenly turned dark and the lands shook. The armies were lost at the Han River. Final year of King Zhao's reign. The night sky was clear, colorful lights surrounded the North Star. The king went south and never returned. Now, because the Zhou people were kind of unwilling to document the embarrassing death of their king on his southern campaign, the details of these expeditions were not fully explained until a set of ceremonial bronzes were discovered during the Northern Song Dynasty, which was basically about 2000 years later. And the inscriptions on these bronze vessels would finally provide us with a bit more details of King Zhao's expeditions in the south. Now, apparently, in the 16th year of his reign, King Zhao appointed the Marquess of Cheng or Zheng Hou to be the marshal of the army, and a man named Zhong was appointed as a commander of the vanguard. Their mission was to march into the region between the Han River and the Yangtze River and to take control of the forces that were raised by the local lords of the area before pushing further south across the Yangtze to capture land that was at this time still under the control of these southern tribes. Now, of course, King Zhao being King Zhao, he would not forget about his creature comforts even on a military campaign, and therefore the Marquess of Zheng, the Marquess of Deng, and the Marquess of were ordered to prepare a temporary palace. No, not a tent, not a camp, but a temporary palace for the king's residence near the front lines. There was no way this entitled little was going to reside in a tent on the battlefield. Nah, no way that was gonna happen. Okay, so apart from that small digression, the Zhou army would rally in Luoyang before marching south towards the Han River. And along the way, the Marquess of Zheng would start picking up troops contributed by the lords north of the Han River. And by the time the Zhou army arrived in the heart of the Jianghan region, or the region between the Yangtze and the Han River, by the time they arrived there, they had amassed a sizable force. And in the face of such an overwhelming show of force, many of the allies of these southern tribes quickly switched sides and swore allegiance to the Zhou kingdom. In some documents, it was said that 26 tribes would swear their allegiance to the Zhou court at this time. Now, the vanguard, being the advanced party, would reach the confluence of the Han River and the Yangtze River first, followed quickly by the main Zhou forces led by the Marquess of Zheng. Now, according to some documents, the Marquess of Zheng and the main Zhou forces would have defeated the bulk of the tribal forces stationed in the area before following the eastern banks of the Han River straight to the Yangtze River. And it was here that King Zhao was said to have encountered a large white rhino along the banks of the Han River. Now, once the entire Zhou army met up at the confluence of the Han River and the Yangtze River in what would be today's Wuhan city, King Zhao left a portion of the troops behind to defend the ferry, while he personally led the army south across the Yangtze. Now, once across the Yangtze River, the Zhou forces will continue pushing south, in a way pushing the tribal peoples to retreat into the deep mountains of the southern wildlands. Now, the first southern expedition will actually end with the capture of this place called Tonglü Mountain or Tonglü Shan, which actually contained a rich vein of copper ore. Now, a small detachment of the Zhou forces were left behind to defend this most valuable of prizes that was captured on this expedition, while King Zhao himself will march back north with the majority of the troops to conduct a victory party where the Marquess of Cheng and the commander of the vanguard, Zhong himself, were richly rewarded with horses and a portion of the copper that was plundered on this campaign. Now, most of the copper will be shipped back to the Zhou capital at halt, where ceremonial bronzes were cast and inscribed to commemorate this great victory. And amongst these bronze pieces would be the ones that we mentioned earlier that were discovered during the Northern Song Dynasty. And that is where we got these details of these expeditions. And that is why I'm able to share this story with you now. Now, however, it wasn't long between the southern tribes got news of the Zhou forces' departure, and they quickly reorganized themselves and recaptured Tonglü Mountain almost as soon as the main bulk of the Zhou forces left. Now, of course, receiving this news that his most valuable prize of the expedition was recaptured so soon, King Zhao decided that he would personally lead a second campaign to take back his precious Copper Mountain. And therefore, in the 19th year of King Zhao's reign, he raised the 6 divisions of the capital at Haojing, and together with court officials Ji Gong, Xin Bo, and the other commanders of the realm, they rallied at Luoyang once again before marching south to recapture these tribal lands once again. However, the second expedition would not go as planned. According to documents, while the Zhou forces were crossing the Han River this time, the weather turned and an earthquake happened without warning, and the entirety of the Zhou forces was basically wiped out in an instant. According to some accounts, King Zhao was said to have died in this campaign, having drowned in the Han River during the chaos. However, based on other records, there would be a third expedition in the 24th year of King Zhao's reign. And it was said that Zhou forces enjoyed great success in that third expedition, plundering countless amounts of coppers and treasures from the south. However, on the return journey of this third expedition, the Zhou army built a bridge to cross the Han River. But due to the heavy load of the spoils of war and all their loot, the bridge collapsed while the king was on it, throwing him into the crocodile-infested waters below. Now, King Zhao's bodyguard and carriage driver, this man by the name of Xin Yumi, would jump into the river straight after his lord to rescue him. But in the chaos, imagine the entire bridge collapsed with everyone on top. So in the chaos, Xin Yumi was unable to locate his master until it was too late, and all he could recover was the lifeless body of his king and lord. Now, either he drowned or he was unceremoniously eaten by crocodiles. We would never know, because the cause of King Zhao's death was not documented in any official records. The only record of King Zhao's last days was that the king went south and never returned. Now, the reluctance of the Zhou historians to talk about the demise of King Zhao also caused confusions over the exact number of years that he reigned, with most scholars having the opinion that he reigned for 19 years, which would basically mean that he died in the earthquake during the second expedition. But other sources would document that King Zhao would lead a third campaign in the 24th year of his reign. And that was a point of contention and a point of debate that is basically still not solved today. Now, the only thing that everyone can agree on is that King Zhao died on the Han River around the year 977 BCE, although the exact cause of his demise have produced all kinds of wild theories and stories. And of all these stories, the wildest one will have to be this one. I particularly like this wild theory. Now, it was said that after King Zhao's successful third campaign, he commandeered local ships from the south to bring his soldiers and their loot back north. And the southerners, being, justifiably pissed off about the whole invasion and being looted and plundered of everything they had, built ships that were flimsily glued together, not nailed together or with any kind of joinery, but just glued together. And they provided these ships for the king's transport. And as expected, once the ships reached the middle of the Han River, they all fell apart, sinking the king, his soldiers, and all their treasures to the bottom of the Han River. Now, believe it or not, this was actually the most commonly accepted theory of King Zhao's demise for the longest time through history. I mean, now we look at it and go like, that's not really possible, but believe me, for thousands of years, most people believe that was how King Zhao died. I would rather believe that he got eaten by crocodiles, but that's just me. Now, while King Zhao's southern campaigns will bring rich copper resources under the control of the Zhou court and no doubt strengthen the Zhou's hold over the southern lands and the southern tribes, the huge expenses incurred in the military campaigns, I mean, not just for the soldiers but also for the temporary palaces that he built for his own enjoyment while on the march. Yeah, these huge expenses, coupled with the loss of the king himself, would greatly diminish the Zhou court's coffers and their authority and their standing in the eyes and the minds of the people. Now, while we could argue that it was King Zhao's southern expeditions that stabilized the Southlands for future Zhou kings, his laissez-faire attitude with regards to internal governance would sow the seeds of fragmentation within the kingdom, and the authority of the Zhou court would never recover from his passive attitudes towards belligerent vassal lords. Now, the depletion of the royal treasury and the loss of the moral and political authority that happened on King Zhao's watch would actually mark the start of the steady decline of the Western Zhou Dynasty over the next couple of 100 years. Now, if you enjoyed this story, it really helps to give this video a like, a comment, and share it with everyone you know. And if you feel that I'm doing a halfway decent job of presenting these stories and would like to contribute to the running of the channel, you can do so on Patreon. The links are available in the description box below. And with that, my name is Apingor, that Chinese history guy, and I'll see you beautiful people, in the next episode.